Okay, I'm still trying to get logged in here. So with that, we'll go ahead and proceed forward to the next item on the agenda.
Are you still there, Madam Chair?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I do apologize. I have no idea what is going on. I am here at home. I'm not traveling, so I understand what's going on with my connection. But hopefully you guys can hear me. We are now at recognizing guests and visiting officials. We'll go ahead and begin by asking, do we have any other delegates on the line at this time who wishes to introduce themselves?
Yeah, this is Delegate Begay.
Good morning, Delegate Begay. Thank you for being on the line this morning with us. Do we have any other delegates on the line?
Yeah, it depends, Vice Chair Smith. Yeah.
Good morning, Vice Chair Smith. Thank you for being on the line. Anybody else?
Delegate Paul Begay is also on the line. Good morning. Thank you.
Delegate Paul Begay, thank you for being on the line with us this morning. Are there any other delegates on the line? Okay, so with that, please let the record reflect that we do have 3 delegates who are currently on the line with the Law and Order Committee members. We have Delegate Paul Begay, Vice Chair Raymond Smith, and Delegate Elmer Begay, who is on the line with the Law and Order Committee this morning. We'll go ahead and proceed forward. Who do we have on the line from the Speaker's office?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Law and Order Committee, staff guests. This is Nikita Kurt, Legislative Staff Assistant with the Office of the Speaker. Thank you.
Good morning, Nikita. Thank you for being on the line with us this morning. Do we have anybody from the Office of Legislative Counsel on the line?
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. This is Loya Khanachni Henderson with Office of Legislative Counsel on the call today.
I'm sorry. Can you say your name again? Because you kind of cut out there a little bit.
Sorry about that. This is Loya Khanachni Henderson with OLC.
Oh, good morning, Ms. Hanafli. Thank you for being on the line with us this morning. So with that, do we have anybody from Office of Legislative Services on the line?
Justice Lorraine Spencer on the line. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Lorraine, for being on the line with us today, both you and Sherelle. Do we have anybody from the Judicial branch on the line?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Law and Order Committee. This is Karen Francis, Office of the Chief Justice.
Good morning, Karen. Do we have anybody from Office of the President, OPVP, on the line?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This is Leonard Sosi with Office of the President and Vice President. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Sosi. Thank you for being on the line. Do we have any any directors or anybody from the executive branch on the line at this time?
Good morning. This is Dr. Gray Eyes. I'm on the line to present on the two new renewal of the detention contracts. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Gray Eyes. Thank you for being on the line. So with that, we'll go ahead and proceed forward. Let me ask, is there anybody else on the line who wishes to introduce or announce that they are on the line at this time? Okay, not hearing
Good
anything.
morning,
We'll go ahead and proceed
Darlene.
forward. Oh, go.
Good morning, Darlene Pino from Navajo Mountain, Untitled Chapter Vice President, listening in. Thank you.
Jag är Benne. Jay Cecilia Tallman, she had one on this visit. Nije Hashnet. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Taltman, and thank you, Doreen. I'm sorry. When you were saying your last name, it kind of cut out on this end, so I didn't get your last name. But thank you, ladies. Thank you both
Darlene
for being
Pino.
on the line. Pino. Thank you, Ms. Pino, for being on the line. So with that, committee members, we'll go ahead and proceed forward to the next item on the agenda. We do have review and adopt the agenda. Lorraine, can you go ahead and read the agenda into the record, please?
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the Law and Order Committee and those who are on the call. Agenda of the Law and Order Committee, 24th Navajo Nation Council, regular meeting through telecommunications, September 26th, 2022, 10 a.m. Presiding, Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton, Chairwoman, Honorable Altoso, Vice Chairperson. 1, call meeting to order, roll call, and invocation. Number 2, recognize guests and visiting officials. Number 3, review and adopt agenda. Number 4, review and adopt the journals. There are 2 journals, August 22nd, 2022 and September 12th, 2022. 5, receive reports. A, report from Paul Spruan, Assistant Attorney General Litigation Unit, Department of Justice regarding ICWA case from Texas. Case being requested for SCOTUS need to hear the background of the case, where the nomination is at on the case and what it could mean if SCOTUS hears the case. B, report from Prosecutor's Office on the caseloads and what barriers do they have within these cases. C, report from Navajo Nation Police Department regarding the Navajo Nation Police Officers Bonus Payment. 6, old business legislation number 0130-19. Going to number 7, new business. A, legislation number 0156-22. B, legislation number 0157-22. C, legislation number 0162-22. D, legislation number 0163-22. E, select another date in lieu of October 17 due to Navajo Nation Council fall session. Date is blank. 8, close the meeting, announcement and adjournment. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you for that, Lorraine. I don't know if you guys can hear me better, but I got off of my phone and I'm now on Zoom. So hopefully the connection is better. Can you hear me, Lorraine?
Yes, Madam Chair, it's better now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So with that, committee members, the agenda has been read into the record. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion by Vice Chair.
Motion made by Honorable Vice Chair Otto. So can I get a second? Delegate Vince James seconds the motion. So with that, committee members, are there any questions, comments, or any amendments that need to be made to the agenda at this time? Second call, are there any questions, comments, or any amendments that need to be made to the agenda at this time? Last and final call, are there any questions, comments, or any amendments that need to be made to the agenda at this time? Not hearing anything, we'll go ahead and proceed forward. Sherelle, can you assist us with the roll call vote for the agenda? Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Vince James, how do you vote?
Delegate Jan votes green.
Thank you, Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Otto So, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you, Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Madam Chair Charles Newton, you have 2 in favor, 0 opposed, and 3 not voting, Madam Chair.
2 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 not voting. So with that, committee members, the agenda hereby passes. We'll go ahead and proceed forward to the next item on the agenda. We do have review and adopt the journals under item 4. There are 2 journals that are currently listed, August 22nd, 2022 and September 12th, 2022. Sherelle, can you remind us when you sent out those journals, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. LOC members, I did send the journal out on Wednesday, September 21st, 2022 at 10:35 a.m. and a reminder this morning at 9:19 a.m. With 2 journals attached, August 22nd, 2022 journal and September 12th, 2022 journal, Madam Chair and members.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. So committee members, Sherelle did send both journals to us at on two separate occasions, one being as early as this morning at 9:19 a.m. Committee members, we can do 2 things. One, we can adopt the journals separately, do a motion and a second for August 22nd, 2022, and then a vote, and then a motion and a second for September 12th, 2022, and then a vote. Or committee members, you have the option of combining both journals and accepting them both with 1 motion and 1 second and 1 vote. How would the committee like to proceed?
Madam Chair, I'm gonna motion to accept all the journals all at once. That's gonna be my motion. Thank you.
Motion made by Vice Chair Otto So to accept both journals dated August 22nd, 2022 and September 12th, 2022 in 1 motion. Can I get a second? Second call, I do need a second to accept both journals with 1 motion. Last and final call to accept the journals with 1 motion. I don't see a Delegate Vince James on the line. Delegate Vince James, are you still with us?
Madam Chair, let's just adjourn. I think let's just go ahead and just adjourn and maybe take care of it till next budget, next fiscal year. I'm in a bad scenario, but I'm on the call. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I do apologize to everyone. It looks like we did lose quorum. We do not have on the call Delegate Edmund Yazzie, and we do not have with us on the call Delegate Eugene So. Both are aware that we are having our committee meeting. We did have Delegate Vince James on the line, but he doesn't appear to be on the line. anymore. So let me call again. Do we have Delegate Vince James on the line?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. James says that his phone is frozen. And he says, I motion second for the vote.
Okay, so we do have a second to accept the journal. So with that, we, let's go ahead and let's proceed forward then. Well, let me ask, are there any questions, comments, or any amendments that need to be made to the journal at this time? Not hearing anything, let's go ahead and proceed forward to the vote. Sherelle, can you assist us with the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Otto, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you, Honorable Otto, votes green. Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Vince James, how do you vote?
Madam Chair, Vince James has the second the motion and votes green. Thank you. Through via text.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Vince James votes green via text. Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Madam Chair Charleston, you have 2 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 not voting. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. So with that, we do have a vote of 2 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 not voting. So we'll go ahead and proceed forward to the next item on the agenda, and that's item number 5, receiving reports. We do have a report from Paul Spruhan, the Assistant Attorney General in the Litigations Unit for the Department of Justice regarding the ICWA case from Texas. This case is being requested to be heard at the Supreme Court of the United States. We do need to get an update on this case. I am aware that Mr. Spruhan has sent us a written report on the matter, but this is such an important issue that it was also being talked about this past week at the tribal consultation in Alaska. And I think that there are a lot of tribes who are worried about the status of this case and also what it would mean to Indian country as a whole. So with that, do we have Mr. Paul Spruhan on the line?
Yeah, hey, this is Paul Spruhan from DOJ. Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Spruhan. Thank you for being on the line. Before I proceed forward with your report, I'd like to ask committee members, can I get a motion and a second to hear the report provided from us here by Mr. Paul Spruhan?
Motion by Vice Chair.
Motion made by Vice Chair Otto So. Can I get a second? Second request. I do need a second to hear this report. Delegate Vince James makes the second. So with that, Delegate Vince James, you did do a second on that report, is that correct? Delegate Vince James? Lorraine, you did hear him say that he seconds it. Is that correct?
Yes, his name was on the ladies. Thank you.
Yeah, there's another, oh, this is Delegate James.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So with that, we do have a second. Mr. Spruhan, you have presented to the Law and Order Committee before. You will have 20 minutes to present your information. Upon completion, if you could just let us know that you are completed so that we could turn the floor over to the delegates who may have questions regarding your report. During this time, I'd like to remind everyone to make sure that their phone is on mute. Any interruption is interruption on the work that is being done on behalf of the Law and Order Committee and on the work that is being done on behalf of our Navajo people. So we'd like to remind everyone to make sure that their phone is on mute during this time. So with that, Mr. Spruhan, do you have any questions regarding the procedure before I turn the floor over to you?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Thank you, Mr. Spruhan. So with that, you do have 20 minutes on the clock to present your information. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Yat-e, to members of the Law and Order Committee, other delegates, officials, and everyone else on the line. As noted by the agenda and Madam Chair, my name is Paul Spruhan. I'm the Assistant Attorney General for the Litigation Unit here at the Navajo Department of Justice. I'd like to acknowledge and identify other attorneys in our unit who have worked on this case who are present. Louis Millette, Sage Matoxen, and Colleen Silversmith. I do not intend to take up the full 20 minutes. I know there are other items on the agenda and other people waiting to present reports, so I will be brief. One of the other aspects of this report, since this is about pending litigation and this is being live streamed and recorded, I can give a general overview of where we are on the case and sort of its implications, but obviously any discussion of legal strategy as it relates to the Navajo Nation's participation in this case is something that I would refrain from reporting in this particular context. But as Madam Chair indicated, this is a case that all of Indian country is watching very closely. We have provided reports, of course, to the delegates, not only of this committee, but generally at the council for the last 5 years as this case has made its way from the Northern District of Texas Federal Court through the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans up to the United States Supreme Court. Now, there have been various ways this case has been officially titled. It is currently subject to 4 different docket numbers in the U.S. Supreme Court, but the lead case is called Holland versus Brackeen. Holland, of course, being Secretary Deb Haaland, who was a named defendant in the case at the very beginning. And they usually switch the parties around depending on who requested the case be taken by the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, the matter is before the Supreme Court on its merits. There were 4 what we call cert petitions. Various parties in the case asked that the Supreme Court take the case. Notably, the Navajo Nation did not for various reasons that we have reported on before. But we are a direct party in the case, having intervened at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals level. And the reason, of course, why the Navajo Nation is a direct party in this case is the Brackeens, who are a non-Indian family in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, adopted 1 Navajo child and is currently attempting to adopt a second Navajo child, who are, from the outside world's perspective, half siblings, who we call, based upon the anonymous naming that goes on in the Texas family court system, ALM, who is a young man, and YRJ, who is a young woman. ALM was successfully adopted by the Brackeens despite the nation's opposition and attempted placement with a alternative Navajo family. YRJ is currently in the process as the nation continues to advocate for a Navajo on-reservation family placement for YRJ, and the Brackeens are attempting to argue through the Texas court system that they should both be foster parent and eventually adopt YRJ. In the meantime, while all of this litigation in the Texas state family system was going on, the Brackeens, with several other non-Indian foster and adopted families, as well as the state of Texas as the state sovereign, and Louisiana and Indiana, all filed 1 large complaint together as co-plaintiffs in the Northern District of Texas Federal Court, which is located in Dallas-Fort Worth. Now, what they sought was the federal court to declare that all or some of the Indian Child Welfare Act is unconstitutional under the United States Constitution. And as we have noted for the last 5 years, the two main arguments is that it violates equal protection, which arises out of the 14th Amendment of the US Constitution, is considered incorporated into the 5th Amendment of the United States Constitution, and what we call anti-commandeering, which comes from the 10th Amendment of the US Constitution. Now, to break that down, equal protection is a constitutional, having a little bit of background noise, pardon me, Madam Chair. Okay. Equal protection means you cannot treat people differently unless you have a very good reason to do so. Now, in federal Indian law, there is a case called Morton v. Mancarry from the 1970s. And it basically said when Congress legislates for Indian tribes, that is a political decision. It is a political classification. And pretty much what Congress decides to do on behalf of Indian tribes is going to be upheld under equal protection. However, there is a strain of argument that appears to be gaining traction, particularly with the current Supreme Court, that in fact Indians and Indian tribes are racial groups, not political groups. And as racial groups, the standard is much higher as to what Congress has to show to justify the legislation. And so the Brackens, particularly, along with two other foster families, are arguing they are being treated differently as non-Indians because the Texas state family court system is required under ICWA to allow for placement priorities with Native families, Navajo families, and particularly with a Navajo relative. And they're at the back of the line from their perspective, because the Indian Child Welfare Act for foster care placement and adoption says, if an Indian child is in the foster system of a state and you need to place them temporarily, or if there is an adoption through the state system, the family court is required at first to seek out a relative of the Indian child. If that relative cannot be found or is unavailable for placement, then you go to another family from the Navajo Nation. If there is no other Navajo family available, you then go to another family of a different Indian tribal nation. Only then, if you go through those three categories, can a non-Indian family be a foster parent or be the adoptive parent of this Indian child. There are a number of other protections in ICWA that state family courts are required to apply. For instance, if you're going to take an Indian child from an Indian family, you need to have a qualified witness testify that the emotional trauma caused by keeping the family together means that the child must be removed from the Indian family, and so on and so forth. And so the real difference in this case versus other challenges that have been filed unsuccessfully in the past is the involvement of the states, and particularly the state of Texas. Now, for those who have been following Supreme Court litigation, the state of Texas has been very aggressive in litigating all sorts of issues before the Supreme Court: abortion, affirmative action, etc. This is part of a larger pattern of the state of Texas and other conservative states to, shall we say, take advantage of the current makeup of the Supreme Court. If you've been following the Supreme Court for a long time, you know the current conservative to liberal breakdown is 6 conservatives and 3 liberals, particularly with 3 conservative justices nominated and confirmed under President Trump. You now have a very different makeup of the court than we have seen before. And certain actors like the state of Texas believe that this is their time, to get things that they have been wanting to do for a very long time done under this conservative majority. As many of you know, this particular conservative majority in the last term issued the opinion Oklahoma versus Castro Huerta, which is the subject of very detailed discussions within Indian country, where Brett Kavanaugh wrote the majority, who was a Trump appointee, and basically upended 175 years of Indian law by saying, oh no, states have the ability to enter into Indian nations and have criminal jurisdiction over non-Indians who commit crimes against Indians. Now, that in and of itself has some concern, but the way that Justice Kavanaugh and the other 5 justices who signed on, 4 justices who signed on to that opinion, how they got there is a matter of serious concern, because they essentially ignored some of the most foundational precedents of Indian law in deciding the exact opposite of what everyone had assumed, even most states up until that time, was that states simply cannot come into Indian country and assert their inherent sovereignty. Based upon that, there is serious concern that this case will also lead to striking down certain aspects, if not the entire statute of the Indian Child Welfare Act, which, as you know, we have a 638 funded ICWA program whose entire job it is to work within the state system, seek Navajo family or other Navajo family placements. And so it is a significant statutory structure throughout the entire country meant to try to preserve the cultural, linguistic, familial ties between Navajo children and the Navajo Nation. And so without going into a tremendous amount of internal confidential legal strategy, the Navajo Nation, as we said, is a party in the Supreme Court. We did participate in the briefing that had happened in the case. We participated, helped draft, and filed jointly with the Cherokee Nation, Oneida Nation, Morongo tribe, and the Quinault Nation, a tribal brief as parties in the case. So the matter is fully briefed before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will hear oral argument on the case November 9th, which is either a Tuesday or Wednesday, I don't remember. It is unclear currently whether the court will be physically open for attendees. Chief Justice John Roberts did say recently at a conference that the court would be open this term. They had been closed because of the pandemic for about 2 years and had streamed the argument live via audio. Previous to the pandemic, anybody can show up, usually in the middle of the night, to get a ticket, and is literally a yellow ticket with a number on it that allows the general public to attend. If you are a member of the Supreme Court Bar, of which myself and Louis Millett and Sage Metoxen will be getting licensed very soon, there is a dedicated entrance and dedicated seating for members of the Supreme Court. And then there are those who are actually attorneys in the case, of which I am counsel of record for the Navajo Nation, in addition, of course, to the other tribes who have their own counsel in the United States Department of Justice. So at this point, it is unclear because the Supreme Court term has not started. It will start first week of October, so we'll be very near, to see exactly how the Supreme Court will conduct it. At the very least, they should be broadcasting it, streaming it live for anyone to be able to listen to. Whether any officials of the Navajo Nation, other than the attorneys, would be able to attend a in-person session to see the justices, that is currently unclear. But of course, we will update everyone when we have official notification as to how they intend to conduct the argument. And so that is the current state of the case. That's what we're looking at. As I say, all of Indian country is watching it. The implications of the case are broader than just the Indian Child Welfare Act, depending upon how the Supreme Court deals with it. Because one of the other arguments, one of the main arguments of the parties on the side of the Brickeens in the state of Texas, is Congress simply didn't have the authority to even pass the Indian Child Welfare Act because Congress's authority of Indian affairs is very limited under the Constitution. Now, this would change precedent for 175 years, much like Castro Huerta, because the belief had been, up until now, based upon numerous cases in the Supreme Court, for good or for ill, for Indian country, of course, that Congress has broad discretion to legislate for Indians in whatever way it deems appropriate, so-called the Indian Commerce Clause. Some people refer to it as plenary power. That is currently under challenge upon a theory that the Indian Commerce Clause is limited to commerce, which means it's limited to trade, to economic matters. And despite the history, of course, of trafficking in Indian children within the United States system, the belief from their point of view is, well, children aren't commerce, therefore you cannot make the state courts apply ICWA because Congress simply didn't have the authority to do it in the first place. Even though ICWA has been in place since 1978 and states have participated and cooperated, I will say one of the positive aspects of this case is some 30-some states, including our 3 local states, surrounding states, Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico, joined a pro-ICWA amicus brief, which of course is a brief that people file who are not parties, who are attempting to make their views known. They filed a supportive brief in support of ICWA and the Navajo Nation and the tribes in the United States, stating their support and for the constitutionality of ICWA. So Texas is currently, and Ohio, who filed an amicus brief, are currently the only 2 states who are actually opposing ICWA in the Supreme Court. For some reason, Louisiana and Indiana dropped out being parties once the case went to the U.S. Supreme Court. But our partners in Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah have been very supportive, and they have signed on to this particular brief. And so the outcome is unclear. It could be nothing. It could be one of the most significant Indian law cases in the history of the United States. And so with that, I will leave my summary to have been completed, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Spruhan, for providing us a report on this issue. Committee members, I will say that that this issue did come up at the tribal consultation last week. There is a lot of concern regarding this matter, especially in terms, as Mr. Spruhan stated, with the fact that we have 6 conservatives and 3 liberals currently on the court, and how this could sway the entire, I guess, the entire Indian law and the way that things are addressed. Right now, the Huerta case actually had come up last week. Mr. Spruhan, I'm sure you probably have already figured this out in terms of what it means to crime in Indian country and just really how it's being handled. And I will state very quickly, committee members, right now we did hear testimony last week from a majority of tribes that are public law 280 states that are currently not receiving funds or any assistance from the tribe when it comes to dealing with crimes in Indian country. And a majority of the tribes are concerned with what this Huerta ruling means to Indian country as a whole. And I know that, with Navajo being as big as it is, there were some comments that were directed towards Navajo regarding, I guess, our lack of involvement in making a statement regarding the Huerta case, the Huerta versus Castro, or the Castro versus Huerta case. And so, there is a huge effect right now that's happening in Indian law in terms of criminal jurisdiction because of this case that was recently decided in Oklahoma. And just as a reminder, committee members, we did get an update. I believe it was from, well, I don't know, I can't remember if it was from Mr. Spruhan, but we did get an update from Department of Justice on this case there that was decided in Oklahoma, what it means to, I guess, criminal jurisdiction in Indian country. But there, and then I could be wrong on this, Mr. Spruhan. It seemed like when the presentation was given, there wasn't very much of a concern coming out from Department of Justice, from Navajo Nation Department of Justice, on what this would mean for Navajo. But after listening to the tribal consultation last week, I think that we should be concerned. I think that the state of Arizona right now and the state of New Mexico are, they have been supportive in understanding the sovereignty issue, but I think the concern is the state of Utah and whether, how that's going to be played out with the state of Utah, and whether, any changes would be made in that sense. So I just want to kind of update you all on the tribal consultation that happened last week, and then also the testimonies that were provided by the various tribes there in Alaska. So with that, committee members, are there any questions or any comments regarding the Indian Child Welfare Act and the impact it would have on the Navajo Nation, on Navajo people, and then on Indian country as a whole?
Madam Chair?
Vice Chair Otto.
Vice Chair. Thank you very much. I think this brief update is good. I appreciate Mr. Spruham bringing shedding light and additional information to this case. I think that if we continue to move forward to ask questions, we're going to get into the area of where we need to go into executive session. So I'm not going to ask any questions pertaining to this because the issue, the update happened to the council during the Department of Justice litigation update. And I think as a whole, Mr. Spruham, I think we need to go into some sort of a overall comprehensive litigation update directly to the committee as a I guess as a update in general of where we're at on all the litigation updates at this time, because we have as the oversight over the Department of Justice. I think we do need more. We do have to set time aside so that we can have this discussion one-on-one with Department of Justice and also with our colleagues who are on the call. Madam Chair, also Honorable Herman Daniels on the line also, so just FYI. But that's just my thought. I don't want to expand any more on a lot of the relating to this issue because it's going to trigger us to go into into executive session. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. But again, thank you, Paul. You can go on mute.
Thanks again, Vice Chair. You are correct that this issue, because it does deal with a lot of legal maneuvering and because it is going through at the Supreme Court, that we should be very cautious in what we talk about and what we ask, because we do have the general public who is listening. And for those who are listening, what we mean is because this case is still ongoing and because the case is going possibly, well, it is going to the Supreme Court, we have to be a little bit careful in not sharing what, I guess, what kind of, I'm trying to think of another word aside from maneuvering, but basically what the game plan is going to be. Because this is such an important case to Indian country as a whole, we have to be very careful in what we expose and then also how Navajo does plan to address some of the issues. So I don't have any questions aside from, again, committee members. I think everybody right now in Indian country, based on tribal consultation last week, everybody's kind of holding their breath right now. I think there are a lot of tribes who are scared at what this is going to mean to Indian country as a whole. And as Paul did state already, there was a decision that was made regarding criminal jurisdiction in Indian country. And now, the issue that we ran into last week is with the VAWA, the Violence Against Women's Act, and how that has, it is kind of expanded jurisdiction. What is the Huerta case going to do to VAWA? Is it, there's a lot of questions I think that are still unknown in this case. And I think the same thing will happen in the event that the ICWA case gets decided in a manner that goes against Indian law and also, against Indian country. So it is a scary time right now, I think, for Indians. I think that there's a lot of people, everyday lives that are happening where they're probably thinking that they're not going to be affected, but it would have major impact on Indian country as a whole. And I appreciate Mr. Spruhan, being very light about that and pointing out some of the issues in that regard, but also, just kind of having a calm head about it. I can say, Mr. Spruhan, that I'm super worried. I'm really, really scared. I don't know what scares me most, the November 8th re-election or the hearing that will be done right after that and having to hold our breath. But I do have one question, Mr. Spruhan, just as a reminder for me. Can you remind me again, once the decision is made, how long after is the opinion usually issued?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to answer that question. So the argument itself, November 9th, the Supreme Court works in terms. So they start in October, they end in June of the next year. And their standard, with very few exceptions, is they will issue all of the opinions for cases they have heard that term by June. So the fact that they're hearing it in November would lead us to believe that the sort of outer edge of when they would release the opinion would be June 2023. Now, they can release it in January 2020. They could release it in December 2022 if they really wanted to. I suspect this case is going to be controversial within the court, particularly as to, well, are we only going to decide that certain parts of ICWA violate the 10th Amendment or violate equal protection, or are we going to go after the entire statute? And if we do, based on what theories? And so, like the Fifth Circuit, which, as we've described before, issued a 325-page decision, and this was en banc, as they call it. So there were 16 judges on the case, and they broke down all over the place on what they thought about this case. And so I would suspect that we will not hear something until May, June 2023. So that gives us a long time to sort of think about the oral argument. And there are various theories as to whether you can really figure out what the justices think by oral argument, because it's a lot of public performance, particularly now if they're streaming it live, which they hadn't done before. But there will be many, 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 many discussions and law conferences and hearings and otherwise. And of course, we can provide a report to this committee and to Navajo and or the full council as to what we think might happen. But we may be waiting for some significant period of time, 5-6 months, before we really know what the case ultimately is going to result in. And then, of course, depending on what they say, there's going to be a whole lot of discussion of what do we do now, which, as you suggest, Madam Chair, is already going on with Castro Huerta. If I could just have one comment on Utah, I will say that we have had some preliminary discussions with officials who are attorneys from the state of Utah who advised the governor, Mr. Larry Eckelhawk and Mr. Dustin Jansen, on this issue. And I will say, at least for the Department of Justice, the only state whose representatives have actually come and talked to us about Castro Huerta and what we think it means is from Utah. So I'd like to at least give a shout out to Utah in the sense that these individuals have taken it upon themselves to reach out to tribal attorneys' offices to have this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Spruhan. Yeah, I think that there seemed to be some questions regarding the Utah concern, and of course, Navajo Nation does lie in Utah. And, you know, I think that we do need to have that conversation so we are aware of what the issues are. And then most importantly, Navajo leadership needs to understand exactly what this is going to mean in the event that Utah does decide to, to apply state jurisdiction. I don't know if they, how that would work. I don't know if, with it being election year, I don't think that they're going to be doing anything drastic within the next year or within the next few months. But that's not to say that anything is going to happen after election. So it is scary times right now, I think, for Indian country. So I appreciate you sharing that information with us. So with that, committee members, are there any other questions or comments at this time? Mr. Spruhan, I would like to request.
Eugene, so.
Delegate Eugene. So, Mr. Spruhan, I would like to request in the next couple of weeks, I think that we do need to get an update on NAGPRA and how that affects Navajo Nation. My understanding is, listening to the news these past few weeks, there are some schools that have come into, parts, human remains of tribes. And now the question I think that that needs to be answered is, how is Navajo going to be handling this matter? And I know that when I went to Washington, D.C. a few months ago, I did go to the Carlisle boarding school, which is about 2 hours outside of Washington, D.C. And we do have a Navajo man who was buried there at Carlisle boarding school. And he has been basically he's been moved twice since being buried the first time there at the boarding school. And so I know that that there's been the question of whether tribes are going to start moving towards bringing home these parts, and with the recent information that came out with the 2 different schools. And I know that I see that Mr. Kevin Barnett is on the call here at this time. Kevin is a student there at the University of Kansas, and I believe that the University of Kansas, or it was at Haskell, that does have remains, and we've had those conversations as well. So I think we do need to get a good understanding of NAGPRA, and then also have that discussion. And I know for Navajo, it's always a taboo to have that discussion, but because it's on the news now, and because it is happening, and it's dealing with a lot of legal issues, I think that we should at least have a report on that, and at least be aware of what is happening out there with schools coming forward saying that they have these parts. So with that, I'm just giving you a heads up on that, Mr. Spruhan. We do have a question from Delegate Eugene So. Delegate Eugene So, the floor is yours.
Chair, that's all members. All. In regards to situation with the Indian Welfare Act, Child Welfare Act, I believe, or the way I hear it, is that it doesn't have any teeth. And now, if we're going to be not going to be using in our favor in the Supreme Court, what is the step that we Indian tribe needs to do? Is there any congressional action that we need to process to make it more where Supreme Court can side with us in the future? As is, it seems that it's an issue where this is a problem where we're going to keep losing with the act that we have, and trying to find other ways to win in the Supreme Court. But if we need something where there's a problem, I feel like my grandpa said, what's the problem? Do you need a shovel or a hammer to fix it? So what shall we do? What can we do? In that regards, as a Navajo Nation Council and other Indian tribes across the United States, to reinforce, or where there's no way it can be cited otherwise, and only for the Indian tribes across the United States. That's my question. Thank you.
Mr. Spruan, the floor is yours to answer Delegate Eugene So's concerns.
Okay, thank you, Delegate So, for the question. Now, it all depends on whether the Supreme Court decides some or part or all of the Indian Child Welfare Act is unconstitutional, but it also depends on why the court decides it's unconstitutional. Because as I said, there are two major challenges, theories, parts of the Constitution, actually three, that are under review by the court. Whether Congress had the authority at all, which means Congress can't do anything if that's what the US Supreme Court ultimately decides, that Congress' power over Indian affairs is limited, therefore there's nothing it can do to fix ICWA. Equal protection, if they decide that Indian is racial, then there are various ways that you can draft another statute to try to fix it. Whether that would be successful all depends on how the US Supreme Court describes why it violates equal protection. If it's a commandeering issue under the 10th Amendment, meaning that you can't tell the states what to do, Congress, that's basically what the argument is for the 10th Amendment, because ICWA tells state courts and state agencies you must follow these protections when an Indian child is in your system. There's already work being done on that in anticipation possibly of a negative ruling. Speaking of Utah, there's been a lot of work, and this is something that LaTanya Johnson at Human Services and Government Unit within DOJ can report more to you on because she's directly involved. State legislatures can pass statutes that basically apply ICWA on the state level. New Mexico just did, I believe, in the last legislative term. There are movements afoot in Utah specifically to draft a state statute, meaning not Congress, but a state on the state level. And that would protect it from the 10th Amendment and anti-commandeering, because it's no longer Congress telling states what to do, it's states telling states what to do. And so I believe Madam Charles Newton mentioned electoral politics. You know, it's very important on the congressional level, the state level, the local level, for the nation, of course, to become involved. And DOJ is involved in redistricting, litigation, and other things to maximize the ability of Navajos to participate in the electoral process. But electing people who are supportive on the state legislative level, who then will pass a state statute that will protect it from some of these arguments in federal court, because then it's no longer the federal government under federal law telling state courts and state agencies that they need to put these protections in place for Native children. It's state legislatures telling their own agencies and courts to do so. And that takes the 10th Amendment and anti-commandeering out of it. And so that's a major thing that is already happening on the state level that can do a lot to protect ICWA. Now, if they decide that it violates equal protection, the states are subject to the same equal protection principles because of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment says states shall provide equal protection. That becomes a serious problem, because then if the Supreme Court decides that Indians are a race, therefore you have this heightened standard under equal protection, states can't fix that, because states have no more, and some might argue less, power to make these beneficial distinctions between Indians and non-Indians if ultimately anything that you do violates equal protection. And so, you know, the answer, and I know people hate when lawyers say this, it depends, but there are things depending on how the court decides this. I mean, who knows? They could find that ICWA is constitutional, or at least some or all of ICWA is constitutional. But assuming they find any part of ICWA unconstitutional, it's going to depend on why. And then on the state and local level, one can make changes, or Congress can make changes to make adjustments. We just don't know. But I will say the state level ICWAs is a good place to start. And so anyone in the Utah side, or people working with Utah, that is something to watch and something to support and something to put the nation's support behind, because that is one positive way that we can at least insulate or protect ICWA from federal attacks, because then if the states do it themselves, you don't have that state sovereignty argument in the same way as currently pending before the court. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Spruan. So with that, committee members, are there any other questions or comments at this time?
Delegate James.
Delegate Vidge James, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Don Chanele, Madam Chair, Ado Kodo, Nikiltanasis 20, Ado Nana Kodo, Nikilnahan Igi, Paul Spirham, yeah, Kodo, Nikilnahan, Ado Kodo, Nikilistane, Ahohin Lado, Alchine, Naka Alchine, Dame, Sedo, De Kache. Had egida ni hitje yatio do be isjanen hitel on do it alt hogo e heta host al de nebes na has ada out de nebes na has anko ado ta host out e na halchinen lenegi e yata ho dan hit no ta hot al hitje yata tio ta hwel ji selin ko na de ella hajo ella التقنيدو hajo na ho elniki be so ze kenzen be shi da le do hajo be ya ho do ta ma do be ja da ella do be ni zin ko ta hat elda but ada tin na hat ko but na zada wa ek ebeden ni do he had not as the neta hot ja heet no sin hit no dan hit ja da hit so le ko kodon hit na had na even na hashtane la hot an halchinen lenigi bis na has jokot ban sina the case le ko hashtag halchine de de ka the konanet ko hashtag in that case I don't hit it by hot shit the upper and halchine they beat at the door they go beda hage bohnet za yet hit up on nothing ta the chinen leniki they beat at the ato benaha koto wa asato ba hot shit na halod hot Nikit has ado be has on it with abe hat it echo. A quaggy has any the shade out of chinin set case no hot chinny yaja. How one going down. How one going stop that it done so that in has at on since echo. Ado the queen dash in hot chinny, a cut out but that is me so lean ko. Ado that the queen that in hot chinnin leniki or put out out. It has cray. Short staff, Ado and the Hojon, the Nen Hade Nishigi. Now, for Nation Department has Ando, Ajibus has Ani Dashwit Ao. Ye that so could that Stoko or Ao, non Nishidi do Lihigi, but on Ado do La Anda in Nista. But no, that what Abe be yet hit echo. Ado non Nishba old car. He could done it. Job vacancy announcement listing the no ko national or stop la aje a could I get that there's in give it task and has hot kate and ko dash up in na dash right out action it all her yun hit has crazy but out and has unlevel a corner but not stuff kiddo hit it out ascente Adosta hanadi nicht adona not that onan no the codon hisen uncle. As Jean Coje Nakata Anish, but now Anje quit up in it or what anhitch not hard or though eight or honey you need glada don't dateness at I at the queen dateness. At the queen la chinne the meal a chinne hot il ado to honi la chinin limita holo onan hitito nili o agent hitan na the not sisako ako akwaiki has anita shahot on sod eya hota bansas case ako hashtag Eliado hashtag Ilia kotash yat chokunan ko ado nana jankwaje ba yel tito dit Eliati noda ba khizinde hashtane la tene hota alchinen linigi yitan no mi to illa ata hashit eshin hitene atan linigi ayo alchini yaje hota ba tahna has ado betiga the bitchen that was it all hojon things and that to it that the need to ko adequate o kote shall has ado kot to hat an sanana case to shinta benina ojo alchene beta il need also to hot abansas case ko to ben hilhanne again the na ko upon the shin adot aho the shin to so the zinlinigi to babe benedni washin tot ayat ko alchinin late bit ot ke da hat dot ot da de cost da wel jishin gi to ko oshin ha u hot an alchinin linigi to the car hot out o ba haspi to le ha shahun chanale to ha nana dam Mr. Spurhan for providing that information to Law and Order Committee. Quite it all. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Delegate James. Mr. Spruhan, I'm going to turn the floor back over to you to address the concerns that were made by Delegate Vince James. I'm guessing, or I'm hoping somebody was translating for you, Mr. Spruhan.
No, ma'am, I'm here by myself, so I only caught very little of that, but happy to comment with a general summary as to what was discussed. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Spruhan. Delegate Vince James, do you want to maybe highlight some of the concerns that you have in English so Mr. Spruhan can address them?
Thank you, Don Shanala. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Law and Order Committee, for giving me the time. One of the points, areas that I brought up was, I wonder what numbers or data statistics do we have that, in comparison to the number of Navajo children that we have throughout the Navajo Nation, what percentage of that are in this similar situation that you provided the report on? And on top of that, do we have the staff, do we have the employees to address these kind of matters, or is it more of a reason that will be given back to lawmakers that, you know, we can't really attack this due to the fact that we're short-staffed, or due to the fact of the high numbers versus staff throughout the Navajo Nation? That would be some good information that would be helpful. But at the same time, what is it that we can do as lawmakers to address that matter? And I think one of them would be trying to fund more positions. But then when you look at the job vacancy announcement, there's that high numbers of days that these positions have been on the job vacancy announcement of trying to find some qualified individuals. So it would be something that would be very interesting to research and to get more information on how to try and address a lot of these issues, especially for our young children that are under the age of 18, that are in the same similar situation that you have provided the report on to us, and how many of those children have contacts with their immediate family or to any of their loved ones or relatives back here at home. And from my understanding, I don't think they would have any communication because they're still under the age of 18. And at that point, you know, it's more of the adults talking. It's more of legal portion that those individuals talk for are now for children. So how many of those actually get to experience their actual background of the Navajo culture? So that would be something that would be very interesting to know. And then at the same time, even if we try to address a lot of this issue, how many of our Navajo families would open up their doors to our Navajo children to welcome them into their homestead? Or how many of our Navajo families would have the criteria that's required for adoption to be made? How many of our Navajo families are to that up to power to where they can actually bring in a Navajo child or adopt a Navajo child? Because there's a lot of different guidelines and procurement. There's a lot of process that we need to go through as Navajo families to get to that point. So, and I think it's more about educating the community, but again, do we have the staff to do that? Do we have positions? Do we have funds to do that? It all goes back to funding that particular area. Plus, again, there's other needs that are a priority again throughout the Navajo Nation. So from your perspective, that would be some good information, maybe through an email that you can share with us, some data information in regards to where we stand and how many of our Navajo children are actually out there in a similar situation that you have provided the report on. But I mean, through an email, I think would be very helpful for us to try to address at least some of the matters and see how we can move forward with working with our Navajo Nation departments. Thank you very much, Mrs. Spearham.
Thank you for that, Shanella. So with that, Mr. Spruan?
Yes, thank you. This is a discussion I know that is ongoing, and this committee and other committees, HEHSC specifically, in terms of the implementation on the ground of the Indian Child Welfare Act as it exists now, given our limited resources, given the sheer number of Navajo children out there who are in the system, and everything that Delegate James has identified, I agree with. I think, you know, even if ICWA remains in place as it is, there are ongoing issues in terms of having appropriate staffing, because I can say, having just been sort of indirectly involved, because I was the AAG of Assistant Attorney General of HSGU, and I know Latanya Johnson is on the line, working more directly with the ICWA program within the Division of Social Services. There's so many children in all 50 of the states who, for various reasons, usually involving unfortunate situations with their family, end up in the state systems. And then that triggers all the way back here in Window Rock and the other offices out there, the attempt by the nation to assist as much as possible. And I'm sure as delegates, you receive inquiries fairly often from people on the nation whose relatives end up having issues in the state system, you know, whether it be Kansas or Texas or Florida or Maine or whatever, looking for help, looking for assistance. And so, you know, it seems like such a, and it is, you know, large macro issue, and the ability to deal with it on the nation with the resources that we have becomes very difficult. And so there are a number of different issues that come up in this discussion. The vacancy issue, finding people who want to come and work for the nation, you know, for the salaries that we can offer in the offices that are available. And so, you know, it's a much larger issue than I think we can discuss in this report, but definitely, as I say, Ms. Johnson is on the line. I will discuss with her working with Social Services Director Neswood Gishi, and then down to the ICWA program, getting as clear of a picture in terms of statistics and otherwise as to how many children are out there, how many ICWA cases we're aware of, where they are, and that kind of thing, and happy to provide it to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Spruan. Committee members, delegates, are there any other questions or comments at this time?
It's Eugene. So,
Delegate Eugene So, the floor is yours.
in regards to the Indian Child Welfare Act, my main concern is how to put more teeth in there. Like as set constitution, the state has their own constitution. If we go after, how would I go after to reinforce or re-amend where it can be more helpful to the Indian tribes? Which if we're going to go to the states, like in Arizona, is very hard. We have a Republican-controlled state and a house. It's really hard to put any bills in there that are some of our representative tribes. They don't really look at it. So it just gets stuck. I mean, it just gets lost in the way, in the process. So in order for a state like Arizona, a Republican control, how can we, is there another way we can re-amend these laws that is kind of like not really helping the tribe, which we go to the Supreme Court? And, me and my wife had an incident with Oklahoma State, according to the state picking up the kids, grandkids, and put them in the state, I guess, adoption. But we use the Navajo Nation Social Service, bring them back automatically, got them back out of there. And also the same thing happened again in Utah State, but we got the kids out of there again too. So I thought it was very a good law that happened, but now it seems like if somebody's going to fight it tooth and nail, there's a lot of holes in the legislation, a lot of language that can be used to go against the Indian tribes, where they cannot get the Supreme Court their way, to favor their way or judge their way. So my concern is how and what kind the LOC can do to start a process to re-amend, or to where the state can, all 4 states, 3 states now, that New Mexico already did. So along that line, how can we try the other 2 states? And I think you said also Utah are in the process. So maybe Arizona needs to go in that process too. See if we can somehow turn some of these Republican hats our way. So that's my main concern in regards to what's happening out there. Because in the Indian tribes, to us is we want to take care of them. Yes, they're all family. Yeah, they got lost somewhere along the way. But another thing that I really also thought about is I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's already been it's already been what do you say? Like some people would use Indians to get something in their way, like profiting from it, materialistically or money-wise. Any kind of way they can use. I just want to know if that's already been investigated because of who is trying to get the Indian kids. So that's another thing that I always consider, because I was talking to some of the Mormons and they really favor the Navajo Nation tribe because of some in their religion. So those are some of the things that I was thinking about too. Why are these families really want the Navajo or any other Indian tribes to adopt these Indian tribes? So that's another thing that I was thinking about. If it's not, then it's not. Thank you.
Another chair, just Delegate McKay.
Thank you for that, Delegate Eugene. So, Delegate Elmer Begay, the floor is yours.
Again, another Chairwoman, other members of the Law and Order Committee. We're talking about the Child Welfare Act. I just want to throw a question here. It's been on my mind for quite some time. I know that I've been on Law and Order Committee before. I think we're talking about the children. Some of these kids, as of today, the people that I got to know, some of these, they're becoming to be a young adult, and they came out of the some of them just got out of schools, and they're on interns. Called I got to understand them when I talk about cultural, when I talk about traditions, and they will always say they're very interested in it, but they're hesitant to, and they're kind of feel outward. They're Navajos, they're the neck, and they feel like how to start using traditional and going to ceremonies, and they have interest in it. But it seems like when I look back, when I look at them, it seems like they say that I wish I could have learned this when I was young, and I was just taken to this place. I thought these Western ways of education and the belief in the religion part of it, I was brought up like that. I never knew our tradition. So today I feel like I want to learn. Is it okay to learn these? It seems that if you think about it, it seems that they're mostly saying that they didn't have a chance. They were not given a choice, or they were not given an options, or they never knew anything about this traditional way of ceremonies and cultural traditions. Nothing. Although those ways of being the ceremonial ways of some of this were brought up, they didn't have a chance to happen. So it seems like when you look at that part of it, it seems like when we talk about the Child Welfare Act, children that are out there, that they're the nest, but they were being taken just because of nobody in the family or the whole Navajo Nation or another Indian tribes, that there's no interest in it to adopt them, to foster them. So to just go in somebody that's other nationality to adopt them. I call that part of it right here. It seems like I know that maybe some of them, these kids, were taken out from a home place for a reason. So maybe it was good for them Maybe there was something going on. Maybe there's some violence where this young child, innocent child, was born, and this is like they're being blessed to be born somehow in a way they're not supposed to be there, or to be saved, survive. I guess some of them might be taken outside to another family or another nationality to be raised, to continue their education. Maybe that's one thing, but is there a way that before they could, is there a way, even though if they're adopted, that they're being adopted by law, through all the process of the law, but is there a Navajo Nation law, or is there any federal law that says that if they're the Nat people, is there a way that they can somehow give an option to be connected back to Navajo Nation, Navajo people, like tradition, like a ceremony, maybe at least one ceremony for them, because they're the Ne, and they might see that, to see that they're even though they were brought up from a family from the Navajo Nation into another place, they might think that they're to have maybe a chance to see what if she grew up to be Navajo, to be the Ne. What was it part of it? Maybe she might change her lifestyle later on when she graduates or whatever, where she's going about. Maybe, and so in this case, is there any, maybe just only one ceremony, maybe just to give them a taladin and say that there'll be a prayer and to be a song that you're the Ne. But, the Hinasin da Kego, that's like the caution. And so in this case, is there a law that, is there something that can be put in place? Is it lawful to do that? I'm just asking this question, Mr. Paul Grutham. Is there that it can be amended, or is it with this Child Welfare Act? This is my thought, that maybe for kids that don't have that chance or don't have an idea, nobody didn't say anything, mention about them when they were being adopted. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Shanella. Delegate Elmer Begay. So with that, Mr. Spruhan, there were questions and concerns from Delegate Eugene So, and then also from Delegate Elmer Begay. I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to you at this time. Mr. Spruhan?
Yeah, thank you. Generally, to summarize, at least as it relates to Delegate Elmer Begay, there's no current law that I'm aware of, federal or otherwise, that would mandate that. There are all sorts of other issues that might come up. As a matter of policy, of course, as lawmakers, one can always amend the Al-Chinipepehazani Act or otherwise to state that as a matter of Navajo law. Now, of course, the problem with Navajo law, well, it's not a problem with Navajo law, it's a problem with federal law, is that they believe that Navajo law sort of ends at the border of the Navajo Nation. And then it becomes sort of aspirational in the sense that a state judge or a state legislature or someone can take note of it and in theory could follow it, but is not mandated to do so. In my limited experience, and when I worked at Legal Aid in Gallup 20 years ago, I had at least one family law case involving a mixed marriage where there was an individual Navajo woman and a white father. And the judge himself, to his credit, elected judge in McKinley County, a white male judge, actually incorporated some of what you're talking about into his order, because the parents were fighting about custody. And he was very understanding of this. So there are ways in individual cases, in theory, particularly when the Navajo Nation is a party, because one of the important parts of ICWA for our purposes is the Navajo Nation can intervene directly in these state cases, which through HSGU and the ICWA program, there are various recommendations, and then we ourselves, or if we have contract attorneys in the various jurisdictions we're not licensed in, can actually be a direct party in the case and can advocate for such things. Even if there is not a Navajo placement, that certain protections be in place in the court order that would reflect the importance of Navajo culture, tradition, history, connections to this child. And so, there are various ways you can do it. They are imperfect, like a lot of things, but through a combination of these things as we currently stand, that is something that can be done in individual cases. That is something that the Navajo Nation Council can consider as a matter of Navajo law. And as we were saying, in advocating on the state level and the federal level, and I absolutely appreciate Delegate Eugene So's discussion about the partisan politics involved in dealing with state legislatures, right? The Arizona legislature is very different than the New Mexico legislature. The New Mexico legislature is very different than the Utah legislature. Sometimes it cross-cuts Republican versus Democrat, but as I believe Delegate So noted, Utah is a little different in terms of being a very Republican state, but having a very different history and connections and otherwise with the Navajo Nation, where Utah tends to, bears ears notwithstanding, be more knowledgeable and potentially sympathetic in working with the nation on the issues that are important to the nation. So absolutely, it's a difficult situation, and ideally we shouldn't be in it. But I think the main point is the opponents of tribal sovereignty, the opponents of tribal nations, the opponents of ICWA and all of the protections, however imperfect they may be, that are in place in federal law, think this is their time. And so we can push back and fight in the courts, which is what we're doing now. But we can also, even if it doesn't come out our way, find various political and legal channels with all of the resources that we do have to at least make as many protections as possible within the legal atmosphere that we find ourselves in. And I'm personally dedicated, and I know my staff is, and I know Ms. Johnson's staff at HSGU are, to work with this committee and the council and with social services and otherwise to do what we can to make sure that those connections remain with Navajo children who are outside our jurisdiction. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Spruhan. I know that we do have Delegate Nathaniel Brown, who is on the line, who also wishes to be added to the lineup. Delegate Nathaniel Brown, the floor is yours.
Oh, yeah, there's another. Law and Order Committee. Mr. Spruhan, thank you for this very important conversation report, the movement on Indian Child Welfare Act. Last week I was in a meeting. I did attend the Utah Tribal Leaders meeting where we did address ICWA and how the state of Utah is working group. So Miss Latanya Johnson was on the line. So she did report, and she will be attending the Utah ICWA State Task Force. So that's where the movement is. And really the tribes decided that we were going to sit in these in the ICWA task force, and each tribe will pass a resolution. So I'm really interested in from Navajo DOJ. I know Latanya did make some recommendations and some possible findings, important language that might be missing. So she'll be working on that. But one thing that I wanted to add was I work really closely with the Utah foster care, Miss Stephanie Benali, and she's always reaching out to Navajo leadership in foster care and adopting Native American babies. What she stresses to us and everyone that's listening to us right now, our leadership, to everyone that's listening, we need as many foster families, Navajo foster families. We also need people who are our own relatives who can adopt our Navajo children. And so there is a lack of our own people, adults who, and there's a reason for it also, and this is where I'm glad we're having this conversation. I know that I did have my relatives, we do adopt, we have, and one of my sister was going through the process. When she started, it was on the Navajo side that was really challenging. It was going above and beyond to the point where it was almost next to impossible to adopt our own Navajo children who needed a home. So I wanted to make sure that this committee makes sure that the ICWA office gets the resources that they need, and I know staff is always an issue. So that's a big issue and a big hurdle that our Navajo people, when they want to become foster parents. And the other part is, because of COVID, I had a friend who said when the single parent lost their life to COVID, it was the next of kin who inherited or started the process of adopting the kids. And this is where there's a specific funding, I forget the name of it, but it's for our Navajo children who are going through the foster care system and who are being adopted, who are being in placement. Those fundings at the social service levels were being held up. And again, our Navajo parents who were taking in children were given the runaround from Navajo Nation Social Service. So that turned away Navajo families who want to become who wanted to adopt children, Navajo children, as well as the foster care system. So there is a broken system that, to my understanding, on the Navajo side, and I think and at one point I was told that when you went on the Navajo Nation ICWA and adopting, that it was closed. So when we're having this conversation, encouraging our Dene people to become foster parents or adopt children, these very eligible and able families with good homes, but the challenge was on the Navajo side. So if we can also look into that, those are some of the findings from other ICWA workers from other states. I know that when we were working on bringing some Navajo children back to Navajo Mountain from Maine, there was a huge disconnect with the Navajo ICWA office and also assumed jurisdiction for Navajo children. I know that certain jurisdiction was 24 hours, and if it was out of state. And this is why my colleagues that, having a Navajo Nation plane was beneficial. When you're asserting Navajo jurisdiction in a matter far away from here, from the Midwest, the East Coast, even the Northwest, if you start Navajo jurisdiction, then they are capable, the social service can pick up our Navajo children who had limited time to bring them home. So that was something that I know that ICWA has a lot more information on this. And again, I just want to reemphasize on the shift and then the clinic to agent night hosta amado ajedi at nkachin yahadit ish nkido sa to be dahadil asla to eat an halan sa nkit ne an hibank del jish ebini na di equa bini nipidi ninigi ajugunga nkahano ne nahalan. It is because we don't have a lot of families, I think, is a big problem, and that's what these lawsuits, the Brackeen case, have a really good standing on. Also that we don't have enough Native American families to take in kids. So it is on our side. Our people are not, and when I say this, I'm thinking about myself also. You know, I think all of us, we should work together. Maybe we need to have a day of getting everyone together, and how do we streamline the process at the Navajo side, so we can make this a reality for our Navajo children. So, and I think the other suggestion is, I think leadership, we need to have a regular visit to the St. Michael Hawan Hajona and sit with these kids and realize the gravity and the importance of the situation that our children are in right now. We tend to forget about these children in ways, I'm not saying we do as current leadership, but I think a lot of the resources tend to go to the children that are already honor roll students or in sports, etc. So these are the kids that tend to fall through the cracks. So maybe those are some of the findings. Again, if we could check into the social service fundings that are set aside to be paid out to families who are adopting Navajo children or foster families, to streamline that process. I know some young families who take in their nieces and nephews and are still waiting for those funds. I forgot what the funding is called. If we could make sure that families who take in kids are compensated, because everything is really expensive. Children, especially teenagers, they do consume a lot of food. So we want to make sure that these families that take in our children get the financial resources and the other resources like therapy, Shana, you know, you touched up on prayer. Certainly that's available through Behavioral Health Department of Mental and Behavior, DBMHS. And so there are some resources that are there. Eddie, I wanted to bring the suggestion of our conversation from last Friday. We did have the executive branch from the Navajo Nation and Department of Justice was also on the line. So moving forward, we will be engaged in the Utah ICWA state policies and laws that are going to be in place. And we just want to make sure that we as Navajo tribe are involved in the process. So we are not, you know, we just want to make sure what's in the best interest for our children. So those are some of my comments. Thank you, Chanel. Thank you, Law and Order Committee.
Thank you, Delegate Nathaniel Brown. Thank you for being on the call on Friday. I wasn't aware of that call, but it sounds like it was an important call to have been on. I wish I would have known. So with that, Mr. Spruhan, do you have any questions, or I'm sorry, do you have any comments or anything you'd like to respond to with the concerns brought on by Delegate Nathaniel Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I think he expressed it well. I think all of those things are important to identify. I will say, even if ICWA is not touched by the Supreme Court, there's a lot of work we have to do internally to make sure that the promise of ICWA is fulfilled in terms of everything that Delegate Brown noted, the availability of foster families, et cetera. I will say, in the Brackeen situation is interesting because there was a Navajo placement for ALM, but they dropped out because the Brackeens appealed, and the family didn't want to go through the, potential emotional trauma of going through years of litigation and then ultimately losing the child. And that's how the Brackeens were able to adopt, is because the placement fell through, and then they went back to the district court, and the district court awarded adoption. We have a Navajo placement for YRJ. And we continue to fight the Burkines directly in Texas Family Court on keeping that placement. And so, it's a relatively unusual situation, as Delegate Brown noted, because we had people and have people who are willing to do that. But there's so many cases around the country, finding people who go through, as was noted, all of the bureaucratic red tape of backgrounds and all this kind of stuff, and people who can afford to do so. I absolutely believe that the desire to help and the desire to help these children is there. The ability to do so, given the way that the system works, sometimes is not there. And so there's a lot of work for all of us to do internally, as noted, to make sure that as much we maximize that which we do have under ICWA, and that's which we will have, whatever comes out of this Brackeen litigation in the U.S. Supreme Court. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Spruhan. So with that, committee members, are there any other questions or any comments at this time for Mr. Spruhan? Okay, not hearing anything. We do have a motion and a second. Motion was made by Vice Chair Otto, so second by Honorable Vince James, regarding the report on ICWA for Mr. Paul Spruhan with the Navajo Nation Department of Justice. Since there are no other questions or comments at this time, we're going to go ahead and proceed forward to a vote to accept the report. Sherelle, can you assist us with the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Honorable Vince James, how do you vote?
Delegate Tam votes green.
Thank you, Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene Sell, how do you vote? Thank you, Honorable Eugene Sell votes green. Honorable Otto Sell, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you, Honorable Otto Sell votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Madam Chair Charles Noon, you have 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. So with that vote, we do hereby accept the report. Thank you so much, Mr. Spruhan. Thank you for being on the call. Thank you for providing us a report on the ICWA case. And Mr. Spruhan, again, just so that you are aware, we will be scheduling, and I'm hoping that you'll relay the message with the Navajo Nation Department of Justice, but the next Law and Order Committee meeting that we do have scheduled is for October 10th. We may have an October 3rd meeting, but you can be expecting a request from the Law and Order Committee on October 10th to discuss NAGPRA, and then also, I guess, kind of a rundown of what has been happening in the news lately regarding the remains of our Navajo people and whether any of them were found in Canada. I believe there was also a recent news article from the University of Kansas, and then there was also another recent one from, was it University of Arizona? I believe it was University of Arizona. But we do have 2 schools now that have come out to say that they do have remains of Navajo people. So with that, Mr. Spruhan, I just want to give you a heads up to let you know, again, on the 10th, we will be scheduling DOJ to provide us an update on that.
Yes, ma'am. I will be sure to notify the AG. It will most probably not be me personally, but we will very much make sure that there's someone from DOJ who can provide that report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Spruhan. So with that, we move forward on item 5B, receiving reports. We do have a report from the prosecutor's office on the caseloads and what barriers we have within these cases. But before I call upon the prosecutor's office, I will let you know, we did, committee members, if you check your email, we did get an email at this time from Chief Daryl Noon, who apologizes, but he had to get off the line. He is currently meeting with the Bureau of Indian Affairs regarding some issues that they have to address in their meeting started at 12. So he does apologize, and I did respond back that at the next meeting, October 10th, Lorraine, if we could go ahead and schedule, actually maybe on October 3rd. Committee members, we will be having a Law and Order Committee meeting on October 3rd at 10 o'clock. This will be a special meeting. The reason for that meeting is because we did not have a Law and Order Committee meeting that needed to be rescheduled. So with that, we're going to have it on October 3rd at 10 o'clock a.m. Lorraine, at 10 o'clock a.m., could you put that the first thing as a report? And this is the report on the bonuses that were approved by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We need to get an update on where the police department is at, and also criminal investigations, where they're at on this. And we need a report on the amount of bonuses that will be issued to police officers during with the funds used by 638 funds. So if we can make sure that they're scheduled first for the reports, that way we can get them in and out as soon as possible. So with that, committee members, we do have a report from the prosecutor's office. I'd like to ask at this time, do we have Chief Prosecutor Vernon Jackson on the line?
Yes, I'm on the line.
We do have the Chief Prosecutor on the line at this time. So with that, committee members, can I get a motion and a second to hear the report from Vernon Jackson, the Chief Prosecutor, on the caseloads and then the barriers that exist regarding these caseloads?
Motion by Vice Chair.
Motion made by Vice Chair Otto So. Can I get a second?
Eugene So.
Second, Honorable Eugene So. So with that, Chief Prosecutor Vernon Jackson, you have presented to this committee before. As a reminder, you will have 20 minutes on the clock to present your information. You can have up to 2 agents to help assist you during this time. We'd like to ask that when you're done with your report, that you please let the committee know so that we know that the floor is ours and we can ask questions. During this time, I'd like to remind everyone on the line to make sure your phone is on mute. Any interruption is interruption on behalf of the work done on behalf of the Navajo people in the Navajo Nation. So please make sure your phone and your computer is on mute. So with that, Chief Prosecutor Vernon Jackson, do you have any questions regarding the procedure before I turn the floor over to you?
No, Madam Chair.
So with that, Chief Prosecutor Vernon Jackson, the floor is yours.
Yat Shikedo Shidene, Vernon L. Jackson in the Shed, but in the shadow Kia Ani Bashashin, She Dashe Ado Tolini Dashanelle, E Kut Ego, the Nenishle. Good morning. My name is Vernon L. Jackson Sr. I am the Chief Prosecutor for the Navajo Nation. In this capacity, I strive to put forth a brand that symbolizes my sincere and earnest desire to make communities safer throughout the Navajo Nation. Members of the Law and Order Committee, distinguished guests, and members of the public, I am humbled by the opportunity to address this committee with a report on our current docket and the identification of the barriers. The Office of the Prosecutor, hereinafter, when I refer to the Office of the Prosecutor, will be by OTP, Office of the Prosecutor. For those things that we face in litigating these matters. The information provided in this report is not intended to be disingenuous towards my distinguished colleagues and partners, as we all work diligently to make our community safer from crime and violence. Some may say my views here may be insensitive towards the challenges my colleagues and ourselves are facing in dealing with crime within our borders. However, I think it's prudent to speak frankly about the critical matters that deal with the safety of our Navajo people. One way to present to you a snapshot of the existing state of affairs related to the cases we are currently prosecuting centers It centers on the identification of a specific period of time for review. Consequently, this presentation is a very high level review of the period starting October 1st, 2021 to September the 18th, 2022. I will identify a few trends and patterns from the data capture to give us a picture of the current state of affairs. It is inferred from this presentation that the trends and patterns that I speak of today are similar prosecution patterns and trends that have occurred within the last 4 years. Therefore, a narrow review of the cases set here today during this period of review would help us to bring clarity about how certain barriers hinder the effective administration of justice. I want to talk first of all about family violence offenses. During the period of review, 1,305 new family violence cases were added to OTP's workload. Nearly 600 of these cases were allegations that a family member had used some kind of force against another family member that constituted a charge of battery of a family member. Over 250 of these cases involves an incident of a family member being threatened by word or conduct that caused some sort of physical injury or serious damage to property. Also, nearly 200 of these cases involves criminal damage, where an individual intentionally or knowingly deface or damage tangible property of a family member. Almost 100 of these cases involves aggravated battery of a family member, where an unlawful use of force involve a deadly weapon or force that caused serious bodily injury to a family member. Furthermore, cases related to the violation of family protection orders were 45 in total that were or continue to be under prosecution. The top 6 family violence offenses that occurred during the period of review were: number 1, battery of a family member; number 2, threatening of a family member; number 3, criminal damage; number 4, aggravated battery against a family member; number 5, aggravated assault against a family member; and number 6, violation of a family protection order. I want to talk to you briefly about other criminal offenses and moving away from family violence for a bit, slightly that is. Taking a different direction now takes us to a different data set concerning the trends and patterns related to the mixture of family violence cases and other Title 17 criminal offenses. Including the family violence offenses, OTP received a total of 4,979 new criminal cases during the period of review. At the top of this list is the 605 public intoxication cases. Next, in second place, is the offense of battery of a family member at 589 cases. The third highest number of cases under prosecution is driving while under the influence of alcohol or drugs at 495 cases. Just as a footnote, during the period of review, there were 3 vehicle homicide cases under prosecution. In fourth place, after DWI, is criminal nuisance. Criminal nuisance cases sets at 467 cases. Possession of liquor is the 5th most occurring offense, which is set at 271. Again, during this period of review. I want to talk a little bit about driving under the influence of liquor and or drugs. DUI on the Navajo Nation for the period of review is the 3rd highest offense prosecuted by OTP. Only battery of a family member and public intoxication surpassed the occurrence of DUI. There is not yet conclusive evidence demonstrating how DUI behavior has changed during the pandemic. However, a limited analysis of the year in review can be used to paint a picture. With travel and commuting curtailed by COVID, the number of daily auto trips is believed to have dropped as compared to the period 2020. However, public intoxication, battery of a family member, and DUI all suggest that a higher percentage of those who were on the roads of the Navajo Nation may have been impaired. A detailed study of blood alcohol content levels could possibly show drivers who tested BAC levels of 0.08 or higher if we had that opportunity to do that. I want to now talk to you explicitly about the barriers with the prosecution of these cases. It is important to mention that in addition to the 4,979 new cases received by OTP, there are also already 13,558 cases that remain in certain phases of prosecution. Most of these cases were for prior years or for a prior period of time. Again, 1,358 cases. On top of that, 4,979 new cases were added during the period of review. These cases are known as brought forward cases. That's the 13,000 cases. They're known as the brought forward cases, which constitutes a separate universe of cases under prosecution by Navajo Nation prosecutors. Nevertheless, the barriers that exist in prosecuting all these cases are as follows. Number one, these are not in particular order, but I will mention them by order. Number one, the difficulty in receiving well-written police reports to support effective prosecution of these cases has been challenging. Typically, cases that involve a major crime or an incident that is of high public interest results in a 1 or 2 page police report that does not document witness interviews, use of various investigative techniques to gather evidence, and ultimately they're submitted in an untimely manner in terms of not having the accused released back into the community prematurely. To aggravate matters, defendants, once they are arrested, are not provided arraignment court dates uniformly when released from custody within 8 hours of the incident. Most of these defendants must be served criminal summons to appear for arraignment dates. And I'll talk about criminal summons here in just a bit. That's number one, is the difficulty of getting well-written police reports. Number two, the struggle of getting arrest reports and criminal complaints for those accused of violating the Family Violence Act is a significant barrier to successful prosecution. Without the initial facts and evidence of the alleged offense, a motion to deny bail or release is not possible. We can't do anything unless we know the facts of the case. If the arrest reports and criminal complaints are not received by OTP on a timely basis, the Department of Corrections will immediately release the accused at the time the 36-hour hold expires. Again, accused offenders are released back into the community without facing a judge to ensure that release conditions are instituted. That's number two. Number three, the chronic inability of the police to serve criminal summons on defendants who have been charged with offenses is an enduring barrier for effective prosecution. It is important to clarify that the majority of the defendants in this category were arrested and detained at a Navajo Department of Correction facility and were later released from custody after 8 hours. The courts usually reissue the criminal summons after an arraignment has been missed, but the courts of the Navajo Nation have a low tolerance rate for these situations. As a result, significant numbers of these cases, many that involve family violence offenses, results in dismissal by the court due to a lack of prosecution. Again, many defendants do not face the consequences of their criminal conduct due to not being served a criminal summons. That's number three. Number four, obtaining federal investigative material from the FBI is slowly improving in Arizona and Utah. In New Mexico, the FBI continued to impede the release of investigative material for cases that have been declined for federal prosecution. Requests for investigative material for cases in New Mexico, the U.S. Attorney's Office has declined. The U.S. Attorney's Office has declined for federal prosecution cases that involve federal matters, and cases being declined for federal prosecution have gone unanswered. They haven't answered us in terms of where's the investigative material. On a positive note, a recent milestone was reached with an FBI agent for the first time was authorized by the FBI to testify in a federal detainer case in the Crown Point District Court. So in many ways, things are moving in a positive direction as it pertains to FBI New Mexico. That's number 4. Number 5, the current statute of limitations codified in Title 17 for certain criminal offenses is a critical barrier to successful prosecution of cases involving major crime cases declined for prosecution by the federal government. For example, by the time a federal declination decision has been made, the case typically is or has reached the 3-year statute of limitation under Navajo Nation law. This is especially problematic for cases such as criminal homicide and sexual assault of crimes involving children. In these cases, the accused again reintegrates back into the community without any accountability for his or her action, again, because of the statute of limitations. That's number 5. Number 6, the inability of the Navajo Nation prosecutors to access court records through the Just Work portal has also been detrimental to the successful prosecution of cases. In many circumstances, prosecutors prepare for hearings that are not, they are prepared for hearings that are set on a certain day only to be informed by court officials that other previously unknown cases would be heard. Our prosecutors cannot prepare for these unscheduled cases by meeting with victims and determining the best form of justice related to the alleged incident. Allowing Navajo Nation prosecutors the ability to access the court's calendar. We're not asking for the judge's calendar. We're not asking for the judge's notes. We're simply asking for access to the court's calendar. In that way, that would assist in dealing with this barrier. That's number 6. Number 7, lack of evidence is one of the major reasons cases are declined by the federal prosecution, as revealed in a provisional report on the federal declinations for the period 2019 to 2022 issued by OTP. It is believed that this rationale for declining federal prosecution, the rationale of lack of evidence, could influence the prosecution of a case in Navajo Nation courts. The certainty here is that the number of federal declinations for lack of evidence could center on a lack of evidence gathering training for Navajo criminal investigators. This assertion is more applicable to those cases that do not involve the FBI, but only a Navajo criminal investigator. The possibility that Navajo criminal investigators lack evidence gathering skills does the fact that they possibly lack the evidence gathering skills, it does hinder the prosecution of cases. And I do want to say that many of the statements I'm making here today, again, are not designed to be disingenuous to my partners and my colleagues. It is to bring to the forefront the barriers that we face in prosecuting these cases. That's number 7. This is number 8. Filling vacant prosecutor positions is a barrier to the prosecution of these cases. The requirement that every prosecutor be licensed to practice law on the Navajo Nation is a substantial hurdle, but nevertheless, a legitimate requirement for the profession. Moreover, the salary scale for prosecutor positions with an OTP is low and does not attract the best candidates the Navajo Nation candidates for Navajo Nation prosecutor positions. On the other hand, despite these hindrances, OTP will be hiring 4 new prosecutors that will bring a total of 15 prosecutors. We have a total, total 24 prosecutor positions within the Office of the Prosecutor. Filling these positions is a barrier. That's number 8. Again, though, we are making progress. This is number 9, the final one. The final barrier deals with the manner that OTP, it deals with the manner that OTP is consistently being placed in an underfunded situation each fiscal year. Every year, OTP asks for personnel, lapse funding, carryover funds, and unmet needs just to make it through the year. We're not talking about adding new programs or new initiatives. We're just talking about making it through the year. Successful prosecution of criminal offenses cannot be achieved without adequate funding. Your support in allocating sufficient funding for the prosecution of these crimes would ensure individuals are held accountable for their actions. I'm concluding now. Our case docket crime data that I shared with this committee today has shown that OTP contributes significantly to the effort of making Navajo communities safer. Specifically, 4,079 new cases that were received by OTP between October 1st, 2021 and September 2019 gives you that indication. We are also, we also reported this morning here in this report to you that 13,558 cases continue to be brought forward and to be prosecuted. You also heard OTP received 4,979 new cases, which I stated before. We also identified 9 different barriers that hinders the effective prosecution of these cases. Madam Chair, distinguished members of the Law and Order Committee, and distinguished members, colleagues, and partners, this concludes my report for this committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Chief Prosecutor Jackson. That was a lot of information. I was trying to keep up with the statistics, and I will say thank you so much, Chief Prosecutor Jackson, for the declination of cases report. That was so detrimental in the testimony that I provided last week at the tribal consultation, and a lot of tribes after the testimony met with me and were just shocked at number one, the fact that they could even request a report from the Department of Justice regarding the declination of cases. Number two, we did have a Department of Justice, a person who was there, not from our region, but from the Alaskan region. And she did come up and she said that she was also surprised to have heard the number of declined cases. But what she did say was, in all honesty, we're only asked to provide the numbers. And so thankfully she had said that kind of in a large enough group where somebody had said, so you don't have the responsibility of telling the tribes the reason for declinations. And she said, you know, I don't think we have ever been asked. And another tribal member had said, well, I don't think we need to ask. I think if it's your responsibility to be sharing that information with tribes, we should all have it. Yes. So when I did discuss the declination of cases, there was a lot of shocked faces in the room that Navajo had these numbers and that we were able. I didn't specifically share the, every reason for the declination of cases. As you know, Chief Prosecutor Jackson, we are working, to get this approved on behalf of the Navajo Nation so that we can use this data and statistics to show the federal government that, this is what we've gathered in terms of our data. So it was certainly it was very important, to have heard that. They also, at the tribal consultation, were shocked when I shared information regarding our reason for requesting a medical examiner's position, and the number of cases that IHS reported versus the actual number of cases of deaths on the Navajo Nation. I can tell you every single tribe in that room was not aware of the data. They were not aware that that was what was being reported on their behalf. And so it kind of created a frenzy there at the tribal consultation, because a lot of tribes, were coming up asking, where did you get that information? How do we get a copy of that information? And we did have tribes that did come forward to say, well, now we want a medical examiner in our tribe as well. So I just want to say, Chief Prosecutor Jackson, you guys did a phenomenal job with that report. And I know that Mr. Barnett was on the call earlier with DOJ, and I know that he wrote the report. But the fact that we could, that Navajo could actually cite to cases, cite to federal statutes, cite to reports, and then share our data with those in attendance, was really just, amazing to know. I guess that Navajo is starting to track some of this information. And for those of you delegates on the line, I did send out, it's not the official version yet, as we're working towards creating the official version, but we do have the data and statistics. And what Chief Prosecutor Vernon Jackson alluded to in his report is exactly what we're trying to capture to show the federal government that we are in need. And just so you know, Chief Prosecutor Jackson, my recommendation is that VAWA actually provide more funding to our prosecutors, because our prosecutors do not have 638 funding. And so one of the requests or the recommendations that I made to the federal government is that we need to start funding properly our prosecutor's office as well as our courts, in making sure that, we are delivering justice to victims. And it's not just, funding one part of the public safety and justice team. So it's not just funding police officers, it's also making sure that we have funding all the way down the, down the line to ensure that our victims are receiving justice. So just a little bit of an FYI, but I do appreciate you sharing those statistics with us. So with that, committee members, are there any questions or comments at this time for the Chief Prosecutor, Mr. Vernon Jackson, regarding the cases and the numbers that he shared with us here today?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Vice Chair Otto. So one more thing really quickly. Chief Prosecutor Vernon Jackson didn't mention that he himself, the Office of the Prosecutor, as well as Division of Public Safety, I think there's a whole number of people that will be meeting starting October 17th. That's the week that we're in fall session. However, they're going to be meeting the first day at a, they haven't shared the location with me yet, but to talk about the Title 17 revamp, which we are now working towards. And Law and Order Committee members, just so you know, I have been working with Speaker Damon. We are setting aside 2 full days for public safety and justice. And those 2 full days, we'll talk about the Title 17 amendments that we'll need to, what we have is scheduled is on November 17th. We are hoping to schedule a Navikiatskit meeting, and then on November 18th to have the amendments for Title 17 go through at council, as well as the funding that's needed to fund our public safety and justice facilities. So that is the plan at this time. It is after general election. And the reason is because we do need the prosecutor's office to review the amendments that have been proposed to them. And then once that goes through, Dana will need time to draft the legislation, as well as drafting the legislation for the requesting of funds. And then once that's completed, to present a full package on public safety and justice on the 17th and the 18th regarding, again, just in the entire public safety and justice. So just an FYI. Vice Chair Otto, so the floor is yours.
I'm gonna go into a dead zone again. It's all right. I'll go on mute. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And hopefully, when you get back on, we'll still be on the topic. But are there any other questions or comments at this time from any of the committee members regarding this report that has been provided to us by Chief Prosecutor Vernon Jackson? All right, I'll go ahead and open the floor at this time for any delegate who is on the line. Are there any questions or comments regarding the report that has been provided to us here this morning or this afternoon? Okay, not hearing anything. Thank you, Chief Prosecutor Jackson. If you could send us that information. And then also, Chief Prosecutor, I did send you the booklet as well. I know that you had some really good positive comments, but if we need to update any of those numbers, now would be a good time to do that before we present to Nabikiatikit for the official, for Navajo Nation to officially adopt the Public Safety and Justice booklet on behalf of the Navajo Nation. Sherelle, can you assist us with the roll call vote to accept the report that has been provided to us here at this time by the Chief Prosecutor? I believe we did get a motion and a second. A motion was made by Vice Chair Otto So, a second by Delegate Eugene So. Sherelle?
Yes. Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Otto So, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Madam Chair, Charles Newton, you only have one in favor. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sherelle. I don't know if we lost quorum. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. A roll call at this time. Since we only have one in favor, and then I'm also on the line, that's only 2 delegates. So let's go ahead and do a roll call. Sherelle?
Okay, roll call. Honorable Madam Chair Eugenia Charles Newton.
I am present.
Thank you, Honorable Madam Chair Eugenia Charles Newton is present. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Otto So.
Present. Here.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair Otto So is present. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Honorable Madam Chair Charleston, you only have 2 members present. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. Everyone listening in, and also Vice Chair Otto So, I apologize. The Law and Order Committee has lost quorum at this time. We have 3 members who are currently not present. I did go through my email this morning, and I did not see an email from Edmund Yazzie. So he is considered to be absent at this time. Committee members, I also sent a reminder to Dana and also to Speaker Damon regarding Delegate Edmund Yazzie's attendance, his lack of attending the Law and Order Committee members his lack of attending Law and Order Committee meetings for the last 3 years. So nothing has been done about that. And committee members, we did, back in 2019, we did write a letter on behalf of the Law and Order Committee asking Speaker Damon to address the issue. Nothing has been done to date. Delegate Eugene So and Delegate Vince James were on the line. However, they are no longer on the line. I haven't received a text or an email letting me know why they're not on the line. I do apologize. I know that we do have some delegates on the line hoping to get their legislation addressed. So with that, Vice Chair Otto So, are we in agreement to call the meeting for lack of quorum?
I would do so. What it is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Otto So. And again, committee members and those of you who are listening in on the line, Law and Order Committee is the only committee that has 5 members. Everyone else has 6 members. Law and Order Committee has 5 members, but we have only had 4 active members since Law and Order Committee was for the 24th Navajo Nation Council. So with that, I do apologize. We are going to go ahead and call this meeting since we don't have a quorum. I do apologize.
Delegate James back on the line.
Oh, Delegate Vince James. Thank you for being on the line. We were getting ready to call the meeting for a lack of quorum. However, you are on the line. So we do need your vote for the report that was given to us by the prosecutor's office.
Green, Sonata.
Sherelle, did you get that?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. So with that, Chief Prosecutor Vernon Jackson, thank you for your report. With a vote of 2 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 not voting, your report has been accepted. And if there's anything that the committee can do to help assist, you know how to get a hold of us. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So with that, committee members, we'll go ahead and proceed forward. Again, we will not be hearing a report from Chief Noon regarding the bonus payout. I did explain that reason prior to Chief Prosecutor giving his report. So we'll go ahead and move forward to old business. Item 6A, legislation number 0130-19. With that, we do have sponsor Elmer Begay, and who is on the line. Delegate Elmer Begay, are you still with us? Delegate Elmer Begay, are you still with us? Last call. Delegate Elmer Begay or Delegate Thomas Walker, are you on the line? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, with that, we do not have a sponsor on the line, so we'll go ahead and proceed forward to item 7A, legislation number 0156-22. Sponsor is Delegate Otto So. Lorraine, can you assist us by reading legislation number 0156-22 into the record? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Law and Order Committee. Tracking number 0156-22, prime sponsor Otto So, an action relating to Law and Order Committee, Navajo Committee, and the Navajo Nation Council confirming the probationary appointment of Cecilia Tallman as Navajo Nation District Court Judge. This will move forward to Navajo and Navajo Nation Council. And attached as Exhibit A is a letter to Cecilia Tallman from Jonathan Nez, President of the Navajo Nation. Exhibit B is a resolution of the Judicial Conduct Commission. And that was done on August 11th, 2022, with a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 absent or abstaining. And then the confidential document is the application of Cecilia Tallman, Navajo Nation District Court Judge. It has gone through the 5-day comment, and there are no comments received. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Begay calling this.
So with that, legislation number 0156-22 has been read into the record. The sponsor, Delegate Otto So, is on the line. Can I get a motion and a second for this legislation?
Madam Chair, I'm going to motion. I know that we did ask this from the Legislative Council at one point, a sponsor for the motion or second. I'm going to motion. Thank you.
Vice Chair, I thought that you could second it, but you couldn't be the main motion. Do we have Legislative Council on the line?
This is Loya Henderson with Legislative Council. I would just have to check really fast in regards to what was stated before. So if you just give me a second, I can check on that.
Go ahead, Ms. Henderson. Oh, okay, so we'll go ahead and have the motion made by Delegate Vince James. Can I get a second?
Second by Delegate So.
Vice Chair
Vice Chair.
seconds the motion. Committee members, are there any questions or comments regarding legislation number 0156-22? Going twice, any questions for legislation number 0156-22? Last and final call, any questions regarding legislation number 0156-22? Not hearing anything, Vice Chair Otto So, there was no questions or no comments regarding this legislation. However, I know that we do have Ms. Tallman on the line. If you would like, Vice Chair, as the sponsor of this legislation, I can give Ms. Tallman 5 minutes to introduce herself to the committee members, and then we'll go straight to vote from there.
Madam Chair, yes, I'd like for her to introduce herself to the committee and allow her the 5 minutes. And thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So with that, Ms. Tallman, you do have 5 minutes to introduce yourself. Upon completion, let us know that you're done so that we can go ahead and proceed forward to the vote. Ms. Tallman?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, Shanand Adan Clinic, teacher, Shadat no Aniki. Ya Cecilia Tallman in Shia. Touchy in Shlon Totnes on the Bashes Chin. There's a sunny ya that should not let all to the chin that should che. One is this day you see Nasha. We clay J ya sustit. Nasha council delegate and lean there are there Twin Lakes, Tully Haswood, Ilian there. Aro Chachine na ki et edo eski Ado and Sitoke ya din she cannot kido eket not she cannot kido ekedo not ki Aro lay at Sunday Hota Oltragi Northern Arizona University da and they are the Bachelor's of Science degree in political science, minor in history. Tuba City High School there you see the public defender office Ajin National 15 years is lean. Before that Tuba City District Court Ajin National the Biza Dashanache Oko could on hitch at there when see thought he had 90 the dash near the quiet shot the house agi auto Kadona Nishiki 80 billion so the kitty 8 Chikiat Ehon saws auto and the Adnizin on the Nal sosan soas o kadin kunzaga hol jesti badit ahi. Lin hatnin ge adishanan nisho. Abenestle do adishli do should never cut this was you seen something yet. So I'm one of those people that were told that no, I'm one of those products. So I'm here wanting to do a job for my Navajo people, and I will do the job with my utmost privilege and Diego. It is schließen so. I'm done.
Thank you for that, Ms. Tallman. So with that, committee members, an introduction by Ms. Cecilia Tallman has been made. The purpose of this introduction is Ms. Cecilia Tallman is being recommended for probationary appointment to the Navajo Nation District Court as a judge. Thank you again, Ms. Tallman, for that brief introduction. So with that, I did call legislation number 0156-22. It was read into the record. A motion was made by Honorable Vince James and a second by Vice Chair Otto. So I did say that we would proceed forward to a vote as soon as the introduction was completed. So with that, Sherelle, if you could assist us with the roll call vote, please.
Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Otto So, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you, Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote?
Eugene votes green. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Madam Chair Charleston, you have 3 in favor, 0 opposed, and 2 not voting, Madam Chair.
So with that vote, we have 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting. Thank you so much. Legislation number 0156-22 does proceed forward. It does proceed forward to Nabik Iatske. Thank you for that, Delegate Otto. So we'll go ahead and proceed forward to the next item on the agenda, 7B, legislation number 0157-22. This is being sponsored by Vice Chair Raymond Smith and Delegate Wilson Stewart, Delegate Pernell Halona. Do we have any of the sponsors on the line at this time?
Madam Chair, Delegate Stewart's online.
Oh, Delegate Wilson Stewart is on the call. Thank you for that. So with that, legislation number 0157-22, Lorraine, can you go ahead and read that legislation into the record, please?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Law and Order Committee and those who are on the call. Prime sponsor is Raymond Smith Jr. and co-sponsors are Wilson C. Stewart Jr. and Pernell Halona. Tracking number 0157-22, an action relating to law and order, health, education, human services, resources and development, budget and finance, and Nabakia Chip Committees and Navajo Nation Council. Amending CAP-35-18 Citizen Fund Power Line and Chapter Project Expenditure Plan to extend project completion deadlines for an additional 24 months. This will move forward to Health, Education, Human Services Committee, Resources and Development Committee, Budget and Finance Committee, Nabakia Committee, and Navajo Nation Council. And This has gone through the 5-day comment process and there were no comments received. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you for that, Lorraine. So with that, committee members, can I get a motion and a second for this legislation?
Motion by Vice Chair.
Second delegate.
Motion made by Vice Chair Otto So, second by Delegate Vince James. This legislation has been read into the record. Committee members, are there any questions regarding legislation number 0157-22? Second call, are there any questions regarding legislation number 0157-22? Last and final call, are there any questions regarding legislation number 0157-22? If there are no questions, we'll go ahead and proceed forward to the vote to accept this legislation. Not hearing anything. Sherelle, can you assist us with the roll call vote for legislation number 0157-22?
Honorable Vince James, how do you vote?
Delegate James votes green.
Thank you, Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Otto So, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you, Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Madam Chair Charles Newton, you have 2 in favor, 0 opposed, and 3 not voting. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. So 2 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 not voting. Legislation number 0157-22 does proceed forward to Health Education Human Services. Thank you, Delegate Wilson Stewart, for being on the line.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, LLC.
So with that, committee members, we do proceed forward now on the agenda to item 7C, legislation number 0162-22. We do have Delegate Vice Chair Otto So, who is on the line. Okay, it does say eligible for action 9/26/22. So with that, Lorraine, can you go ahead and read legislation number 0162-22 into the record, please?
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the Law and Order Committee. Sponsor also tracking number 0162-22, an action related to Law and Order, Budget, Finance, and Navigated Committees, approving and authorizing a renewal contract between the Navajo Nation and the United States Department of the Interior under 25 USC Section 5301, ITSEC PL 93-638 as amended, for a 5-year term for the period beginning January 1st, 2023 and ending December 31st, 2027 for the Juvenile Corrections Program, approving and authorizing the fiscal year annual funding agreement and scope of work for the period of the contract term. Attached is the Exhibit A, which is the agreement between the Secretary of the Department of the Interior and the Navajo Nation. Following that is the annual funding agreement contract is attached. Exhibit B is the Section 164 review form and has gone through the 5-day comment. And there are no comments received, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that reading. Thank you, Lorraine. So with that, committee members, legislation number 0162-22 has been read into the record. Can I get a motion and a second? Motion made by Honorable Eugene So. Can I get a second? Second request, I do need a second for this legislation, number 0162-22.
Second by Vice Chair.
Second made by Vice Chair Otto. So with that, committee members, are there any questions or any comments regarding legislation number 0162-22? It will proceed forward to Budget and Finance, Nabikiatske, and I believe that is the final for this legislation. Are there any questions or any comments? Second call for questions regarding legislation number 0162-22. Last and final call for legislation number 0162-22. Any questions regarding this legislation? Not hearing anything, we'll go ahead and proceed forward to a vote. Sherelle, can you assist us with the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Honorable Benton James, how do you vote?
Delegate James votes green.
Thank you, Honorable Benton James votes green. Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote?
Vote is social.
Thank you, Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you, Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Madam Chair, Charleston, you have 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. So with that, we do have a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting. Legislation number 0162-22 does proceed forward to Budget and Finance. We'll go ahead and proceed forward to the next item on the agenda, legislation number 0163-22. We do have the sponsor, Vice Chair Otto So, who is on the line, and this legislation is eligible for action as of 9/26/22. So with that, Lorraine, can we go ahead and get legislation number 0163-22 read into the record, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Law and Order Committee. Sponsored by Autoso, tracking number 0163-22. An action relating to Law and Order, Budget, Finance, and Navajo committees approving and authorizing a renewal contract between the Navajo Nation and the United States Department of the Interior under 25 USC Section 5301 at SEEK PL 93638 as amended for a 5-year term for the period beginning January 1st, 2023 and ending December 31st, 2027 for adult detention services, approving and authorizing the fiscal year annual funding agreement and scope of work for the period of contract term. This will move forward to Budget, Finance, and Navajo. Attaches Exhibit A, which is the agreement between the Secretary of the Department of the Interior and the Navajo Nation. Following that is the scope of work. Also attached is the Exhibit B, which is the Section 164 review form. And also attached is the contracts and grants section OMB. Document review check on grant application, award, or modification. And this has gone through the 5-day comment. And there were no comments received. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Lorraine. So with that, committee members, legislation number 0163-22 has been read into the record. Can I get a motion and a second for this legislation, please? Motion made by Honorable Eugene So. Can I get a second?
Second by Vice Chair.
Second made by Vice Chair Otto So. Committee members, are there any questions, any comments regarding legislation number 0163-22? Second time I'm asking, are there any questions for legislation number 0163-22? Last and final call, are there any questions or comments regarding legislation number 0163-22? If there are no questions and comments, we'll go ahead and proceed forward to the vote, and it will proceed forward to budget and finance. Not hearing anything, Sherelle, can you assist us with roll call vote for legislation number 0163-22?
Yes, Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote?
Vote is. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Eugene So, votes green. Honorable Otto So, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you, Honorable Otto So, votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Vince James, how do you vote?
Delegate James votes green.
Thank you, Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Madam Chair Charles Newton, you have 3 in favor, 0 opposed, and 2 not voting, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting. Thank you to the sponsor, Delegate Otto So, and I know that we also had Ms. Dolores Gray Eyes on the line as well regarding both legislation number 0162-22 and legislation number 0163-22. Thank you both. Both legislations have passed. Both will proceed forward to the Budget and Finance Committee. So with that, committee members, we move forward to item E on the agenda. As you know, committee members, we on October 17th, that is the first day of fall session. Per the Navajo Nation Code, the Law and Order Committee meets the second, third, and fourth Mondays of every month. So that means the third Monday, which would technically be the 17th. Since we meet the second, third, and fourth, the second Monday is October 10th, the third Monday is October 17th, and the fourth Monday is October 24th. However, committee members, we are not meeting on October 17th. We also did not meet last week on September 19th due to unforeseen circumstances. So with that, committee members, I would like to recommend at this time that we have a special Law and Order Committee meeting scheduled for October 3rd. And this will be in lieu of the September 19th meeting, and then a October 31st meeting, which would be in lieu of the October 17th meeting. So if this is approved today, committee members, we will then be meeting every Monday through the month of October. That's October 3rd at 10 o'clock a.m. for a special meeting, October 10th at 10 o'clock a.m. for a regular Law and Order Committee meeting, October 24th at 10 o'clock a.m. for a regular Law and Order Committee meeting, and October 31st for a special Law and Order Committee meeting. With that, committee members, those dates, I know that on the agenda it does state October 17th. However, when the agenda was put together, we forgot to add on there the meeting that did not happen on September 19th. So if the committee members are good with those dates, we can go ahead and take a vote, and Lorraine can make sure that those meetings do get properly scheduled. So with that, committee members, can I get a motion and a second to have a discussion regarding the information I just now provided?
Motion by Chair.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Made by Vice Chair Otto So, and these are for the October meetings.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Edmund Yazzie, are you on the call?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just got a text, and committee members, everyone that's listening, saying my meeting presence by you, Madam Chair. I just want to say for the record, I did email the members and the committee that I will be attending a funeral to support the family of their loss. And so I don't appreciate the comment that was made, but you know, this family had lost 3 family members in less than 4 months. And so anyhow, again, for the record, I asked to be excused to support the family for the funeral. I did email this morning, Madam Chair.
Delegate Brigade's on the line, Chair.
I'm sorry, Delegate Admin Yazi, I just now did a search for your email. I don't know, the email that I have on record is the Navajo-NSN, and I don't see anything in there. I apologize. I didn't get that
Okay.
email from your Navajo email address.
Okay. Yeah, I did email, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, committee members. I did email all the members and yourself, but anyhow, nevertheless, Madam Chair, I just asked to be excused for today's meeting.
Thank you for letting us know, Delegate Yazi. And again, I do apologize. I am looking through my email. I don't see an email from you from the Navajo-NSN.com. I'm sorry, .gov email. So I apologize. Again, if any members did get that email, just please forward it to me. So with that, Delegate Yazi, we do apologize. Again, we didn't get that email, but I'm glad that you are on the line. So with that, let the record reflect that Delegate Admin Yazi is excused from today's meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So with that, committee members, we are on we are still discussing the October 20th. I'm sorry, we are still discussing the October 17th, which is the fall session meeting. Again, the plan is because we also, the September 19th meeting, we did not have because there were some unforeseen circumstances that did occur. So that meeting was postponed. So again, the request is that we have a October 3rd special Law and Order Committee meeting. We also have an October 10th regular scheduled meeting at 10 o'clock a.m. October 24th, a regular scheduled Law and Order Committee meeting. And then October 31st, a special Law and Order Committee meeting. A motion. Could I get a motion and a second?
Madam Chair, I believe I motioned.
Okay,
Motion.
I'm sorry about that. There was a motion made by Vice Chair Otto. So can I get a second?
Okay.
Second made by Honorable Eugene So, and this is to have the discussion regarding the meetings for Law and Order Committee that have to be set in October. So with that, committee members, are there any questions or any comments regarding the proposed dates for Law and Order Committee meeting?
Madam Chair?
Vice Chair Otto So, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Yes, again, just to inform you guys that in lieu of meeting for last week's meeting that we postponed, that cuts off with the FY 22 budget as of October 1st. So that meeting, I don't think I guess that meeting's gone. So meaning that it's the new fiscal year. So I would recommend is just not to have the in lieu of meeting, but for last week.
Mr. So, are you still there? Can't hear you.
To November, move it to October 3rd. That way it leaves the committee time open for them to go trick-or-treating on the 31st of October. So that's what I would recommend. But last week's meeting that was missed, we could address it that way because we can't carry over that meeting to the next fiscal year. But I think if we have a special meeting that is called Friday before the fiscal year end happens, I think that is doable and within our jurisdiction. So just FYI, thank you.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair. That is an excellent point. You are correct. I wouldn't even know if we could have an extra meeting in October, because that would seem like an extra meeting to be having for the fiscal year. So with that, committee members, the proposed option is we could have a Law and Order Committee meeting this week to make up for the September 19th Law and Order Committee that was canceled. And then with that, meet on October 3rd, the 10th, and the 24th for our regular or for our Law and Order Committee meetings. So that is the proposal at this time. Committee members.
Madam Chair, that's it.
Vice Chair Eugene So, go ahead, the floor is yours.
I motion for the option of a proposed special meeting this Friday, and the other two, October 10th or 24th, for a regular LOC meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Shaja, Delegate Eugene. So this Friday on the 30th, I will not be available the whole morning. We have Navajo Nation Department of Transportation that will be here in Shiprock. They are going to be, we're going to be driving on the 15 miles that's allocated to the Shiprock community for Navajo Nation Department of Transportation. So that morning I will not be available, but that doesn't mean that we cannot have a Law and Order Committee meeting. I just will not be able to chair the meeting. Vice Chair, if we do have a meeting on Friday, can you chair the meeting? Vice Chair Otto So, are you still with us?
Yes, I am with you guys still.
Would you be available to chair the meeting if we have the meeting Friday, the 30th at 10 o'clock a.m.?
I will be on another meeting on Friday. Okay.
Okay, so with that, committee members, again, if we want to make up for the September 19th meeting, I am available tomorrow afternoon at probably about 2 o'clock. I'm also available on Thursday in the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I am available on Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock.
Madam Chair, let's go for the 8 o'clock meeting Thursday. Thank you.
Thursday at 8 o'clock. Committee members? Okay. So with that, 8 o'clock a.m. on Thursday, September 29th, that will be a Law and Order Committee meeting. It'll be a special Law and Order Committee meeting. This will be in lieu of the September 19th committee meeting. I don't think that we'll have very much on the agenda. So just an FYI for committee members. So with that, committee members, we'll go ahead and vote on this first day. So the vote will be for September 29th at 8 o'clock a.m. This will be a special Law and Order Committee meeting in lieu of the September 19th meeting, and October 3rd special Law and Order Committee meeting. This will be in lieu of the October 17th committee meeting. So with that, committee members, are there any questions or comments regarding those two dates? Not hearing anything, we'll go ahead and proceed forward to the vote at this time. Again, for the record, Lorraine, we will be having a special Law and Order Committee meeting on September 29th, a special Law and Order Committee on October 3rd, a regular Law and Order Committee meeting on October 10th, and a regular Law and Order Committee meeting on October 24th. So with that, committee members, again, are there any questions or comments regarding those dates? Not hearing anything. Sherelle, if you could assist us with the roll call vote, please.
Yes, Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Thank you, Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote? Thank you, Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So, how do you vote? Honorable Otto So, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you, Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Madam Chair Charles Nunyak, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 member excused. Honorable Edmund Yazzie and Honorable Madam Chair Charles Newton not voting. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. So with that, committee members, we do have a motion, a second, and a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting, to have a special Law and Order Committee meeting on September 29th. That's Thursday at 8:00 a.m. And then a special Law and Order Committee meeting on October 3rd at 10:00 a.m. So just as a reminder, at 8:00 a.m. on September 29th is the special Law and Order Committee meeting, and this is in lieu of the September 19th Law and Order Committee meeting. So with that, committee members, we are now at announcements. Are there any announcements at this time from the committee members?
Chair, this is Delegate McKay. I said I'm on the line again.
Delegate Elmer Begay, we called your legislation 3 times. Nobody answered. We also called for Delegate Thomas Walker. Nobody answered during that time. So we are at announcement. What we can do, there's 2 things. We can motion to suspend the floor rules to go back to old business item 6A, or we can go ahead and move your legislation to Thursday on the 29th at 8:00 a.m.
We're on the line, but you guys went out. There was no quorum, so I jumped back on the other meeting, and they called me back up. They told me that you got a quorum again, so it's not even our fault, though.
Delegate Elmer Begay, we didn't adjourn the meeting. We were having quorum issues. However, as you stated, there was quorum that was established or reestablished. So we did call your legislation 3 times. Again, the option, committee members, is we could suspend the floor rules to go back to item 5A. I'm sorry, item 6A, since we do have the sponsor on the line, or we could move legislation number 0130-19 to September 29th at 8:00 a.m. How would the committee like to proceed? Okay, not hearing any motions. Committee members, now was the time for announcements. I'm not hearing any announcements at this time. Committee members, what would you like to do? We are now at adjournment. Hello,
I have a question.
Are we still on the line, committee members?
Delegate James still on the line.
Delegate Vince James is still on the line. Do we still have Delegate Otto So and Delegate Eugene So?
Delegate So is on the line.
Okay, with that, committee members, how would you guys like to proceed?
For the item to next meeting Thursday.
So with
I've been
that,
on the line since 9 o'clock.
Delegate Vince James is requesting legislation number 0130-19 be referred to September 29th at 8:00 a.m.
Early, 1 o'clock.
So with that, committee members, we are at adjournment. How would the committee like to proceed?
Motion to adjourn by Vice Chair.
Motion to adjourn by Vice Chair Otto. So can I get a second?
Early 1 o'clock. Delegate Jane, second.
I don't think we treat you guys like this at BNF.
Delegate Elmer Begay, please have respect for our committee. We called your legislation 3 times. You were not on the call.
We waited for you. Then you said that I'm sorry with the.
Delegate Elmer Begay, I will not argue with you. I have opened up the floor to the committee members and I have asked them how they would like to proceed. You are not a member of the Law and Order Committee. We called your legislation 3 times. You were not on the call. We have a motion made by Vice Chair Otto, a second made by Honorable Vince James to adjourn. So with that, committee members, we're going to go ahead and proceed forward to roll call vote. Sherelle, if you could assist us with the roll call vote, please.
Honorable Vince James, how do you vote?
Delegate Jane votes green.
Thank you, Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote?
Green, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you, Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Madam Chair Charles Newton, you have 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Honorable Edmund Yazzie is excused, and Honorable Madam Chair Charles Newton not voting, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. So with that, the Law and Order Committee is hereby adjourned at 1:30.